you. Welcome everybody to the Adult Services panel. We'll go through apologies first. I think we've had 2 at the minute, Liz.
We've received apologies from Paxton Hood Williams, Yvonne Jardine and Henry John.
Right, okie dokie. Disclosures. Are there any disclosures of interest? None? Great. Item 3, prohibition of whipped votes and declaration of party whips. It goes without saying. And we go on to item 4, which is minutes of the previous meeting. Okay, we have one set for the 21st, and we'll go through the pages 1, pages 2, and pages 3. We've also got a letter for the 21st of March, which is in your packs. It doesn't look as if Tony Bedu is here at the minute, but he did want to raise something. Liz, is he on the meeting at all?
No, he's not online at the moment, Chair. Maybe he can ask it a bit later if he joins.
If you bear with us, I would like him to ask the question, obviously, because he's written to us. I assume that you're all in agreement that's an accurate record?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you, Liz. Item 5, public questions, Liz. We're going like a bomb, aren't we? Good grief. Are there any questions?
No, we haven't received any questions, Chair.
That's great. Now we go on to item 6 then, which is Adult Services Complaints Annual Report for 1922. 2022, 21 and 22. Louise, you wanted to say a few words on this?
Yeah, I'll just introduce. I don't know if Sarah Lackenby wants to go over any particular detail. Obviously, this complaints report is the whole corporate complaints report. We're obviously just focusing on our adult services section of it. Just wanted to provide a bit of context, really. Obviously, note that it's the report for 21-22. So impact of COVID was still very much with us and evident. And as it outlines, we can definitely see the increasing complexity of cases, the recruitment pressures that we've had as a service. Staff sickness, issues with the IT system have all had an impact, which have led to an increase in complaints. Not a huge increase, though. 11% increase in stage 1 complaints, 123 to 139, and only 1 more at stage 2. Numbers from 10 to 11. Then there is an increase in the justified complaints, 53%, but that's largely related to delays in arranging assessments, packages of care, and it really does show that how challenging a time that has been. Obviously, the service always learn from these. There are important opportunities to reflect on what has happened to families, take them very seriously, and it informs future good practice across the service. And also, just as important to note is the compliments and the nice comments that the service gets. It's really important to celebrate that positive work as well. And there, in page 26, I think, has got a summary of those. So, Sarah, I don't know if you wanted to add any more technical information to that. I think Sarah's on the call, is she?
I am, yeah, no,
yes,
I'm here.
Oh,
yeah. Sorry, I couldn't see you on my screen.
Yes. Sarah, do you want to share the report on screen, Sarah?
Yes, I can do that.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you, Louise, for the introduction, and we hand over to Sarah now then.
Bear with me.
Great.
Can you see the report?
Yes, I can. Can everybody else?
Yeah.
Lovely, thank you.
So I think Councillor Gibbard's covered pretty much everything in the technical details. Just so a few points to add. we've obviously presented the whole report just to give the context across all the complaints, because it is useful to see. Just in terms of the Ombudsman, just to flag, so the Ombudsman, when they send their letter, which is in the appendix, that is about the number of cases that they have closed in that year. It's not necessarily the number of cases received that year, which is why sometimes the Ombudsman's figures are not the same as our report. So you'll see in the appendix of our report, it talks about the 12 received from the Ombudsman. That is the actual ones that we've received in the year. The Ombudsman cases that were closed are a different figure, just because some of those relate to previous years. So they only tell us the ones they've actually closed in a given year. They're not necessarily related to that year, which is why the numbers are different. But we actually received 12. We have talked to the Ombudsman about this before, because all councils find that there's not this correlation between our own reports and their report, but they're quite relaxed about that. They said, you know, that they're actually measuring two different things, so it's okay. Also, just to flag the service improvements as well, quite significant service improvements in terms of the in terms of adults, with the amount of quality assurance meetings that the complaints team also attend. So there's, you know, very much a joint working arrangement between the corporate complaints and adult complaints and social services principals, which is working really well. And also in the appendix, you'll also see there's a lot of detail there around the compliments received. Significant amount of compliments, 96 for adults in the year, and you'll see, you know, some of the examples in the appendix as well. So there's some really positive but difficult trends as well, in terms of the Ombudsman also in their letter recognised that because there was this fallout from COVID and the lockdowns, that they were finding that what the Ombudsman called the rebound effect. So we saw less complaints in 2021, but then a significantly more in 21-22 because of that rebound. And we're likely to see that into 22-23 as well, because of all the pressures on the service. So I think that will set to continue. But generally speaking, in terms of increases, the increases aren't significant in terms of, you know, especially in stage 2s, you know, we're only seeing a small increase in those. So I think there's generally you know, there's no trends for concern in the report. Thank you.
Sarah.
Happy
Thank
to
you,
take any
Sarah.
questions. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for anybody?
Oh, that's not.
Jeff, your hand is up. You're on mute, Jeff. You're on mute, sorry.
There we are. Okay, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Sarah, for that. You know, the first particular part where it actually says, you know, requests for services, I think it was page 9 or whatever. I know it mentions repair of a lamppost. I know you don't get many requests for repairs of lampposts in social services. But if, shall we say, somebody is deemed to have a home visit and they don't get that visit, so that's because somebody actually, shall we say it happens a couple of times, does that actually evolve then into a request for service? You know, how does it actually report back to you that, you know, something hasn't worked out properly?
In terms of the home visits, Councillor Jones,
Well,
I'd
I
have
only
to have a
picked
look
home
at that
visits.
one.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at the process that's actually followed by, shall we say, the department, in actually highlighting, you know, would it be the complaint actually comes to you, or does it go to social services, and who deems it then to actually come to you? How does the process work?
The complaints process for social services is defined in the legislation, so it's
Right.
very specific in terms of much more it's different with corporate complaints. You get much more requests for service with a corporate complaint. For actual complaints with social services, it has to follow the legislation, so it's a completely separate policy. So usually there is an initial acknowledgement, but also a meeting with whoever is complaining, so that we can ascertain exactly what the complaint is about, to see if also that can be resolved at that point as well. So there's quite a detailed and lengthy process specifically for social services.
Okay. Right. I know, Louise, you actually mentioned earlier, this is about adult social services, and I think I actually read through the report quite quickly, and I know we've had COVID, which I think the Ombudsman has actually mentioned as well, but I think it mentions children's social services actually in it as well, and that seemed to come out of it, shall we say, quite well. It wasn't really affected. Why is there an effect with regards to COVID for adult social services and not so much children's social services?
Well, I would guess just the impact of care, really, and how much pressure the care, adult social care was put under by the pandemic, really, and the backlogs that we've experienced because of health as well. The whole thing interconnected. I don't know, Amy, Dave, would you agree with that? I think it's it's a slightly different situation in children's child and family, in terms of how COVID's affected it. Obviously, it has affected it, but it's like in a different way that's not likely to lead to the same complaints about people waiting. And as Sarah said, that sort of rebound effect of people kind of not complaining during the pandemic because they understood the situations that we were under. But then once restrictions started to lift, they kind of thought, well, actually, I'm still waiting. I want to make my complaint now. That's my understanding of it. So I can see Dave's hand is up. He might be able to fill us in a bit better.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think that's the right analysis. If you think back, Councillor Jones, of all the briefings we were doing around things like the lack of capacity around domiciliary care, that was probably one of the areas that was most dramatically impacted. We ended up with, not uncommon to anywhere else in Wales, but we ended up with waiting lists that was something like 300% higher than we'd ever experienced in our history. And it's only actually within the last couple of months where we've now recovered domiciliary care services back to pre-COVID levels. So for all that period of time, that's one service. Clearly, we had impacts on all sorts of services. If you layer in the workforce impact of staff absences, etc., a lot of that, we have a much bigger workforce across adult services. They were, both within and outside of the council, they were particularly impacted. And again, it's only now, probably again within the last few months, that we've started to see sickness absence levels, plus attempts to recruit staff in a difficult kind of workforce context. It's only really literally in the last couple of months that we've seen things recover to pre-COVID levels. There was an impact on children's services, significant impact, on our ability to manage service delivery in the way we would have done outside of COVID and the COVID restrictions, but probably on those key areas of capacity to deliver direct care and the very dramatic impacts on a workforce, it just played out a bit differently. And as probably as both Councillor Gibbard and Sarah have reflected, it's played out differently into the complaints reporting as well. I mean, I think the points that both Councillor Gibbard and Sarah have made about we might have expected worse in terms of the numbers, and we're not out of the woods yet. We're still going to have some, lag as whilst services continue to recover. And of course, the other thing with adult services is it's much more closely connected to and impacted by the pressures in the health service. And whilst we're just beginning to see, as I say, the recovery of adult social care to pre-COVID levels of resilience. The health service is a long way away from that. So the pressures that still play into the system from health resilience not recovering yet to pre-COVID, and then all the backlogs, that's still going to play into the social care system as well. And then again, of course, people are looking for solutions. They don't really care whether it's health service or a social care service. What they're concerned about is they're not getting the type of care and support overall that they need. So definitely not out of the woods yet. I still think again, as others have flagged, that we got a couple of tough years ahead still. But nevertheless, as things stand at the moment, first of all, it's really pleasing that finally we're seeing services recover to something like what we would expect ordinarily, albeit with a changed nature of demand. At least the numbers are back to where we would expect to see them ordinarily. But that resilience that we're having to build is still ongoing, and is going to take us a couple of years to get there, really, I think.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay,
Are you
thanks.
happy?
Yeah, so I'm just going to say, so children's service, shall we say, is not as reliant on external partners and service providers, or is that more condensed answer? Or?
There's a couple of areas, Councillor Jones, where we definitely are impacted in similar ways. So the shortage of registrant social workers, we know that's a significant issue, particularly in our child protection services. And we have got an issue around placement sufficiency. So for the children who we aren't able to support to stay safely living with their families and in their communities, and we're having to look for alternative placements, there's definitely capacity issues there that are going to be very dramatic for the individuals that are impacted. But the size, the numbers that are impacted are much smaller. So the impacts are very significant, but on a smaller number of people. Therefore, if you try and translate it into, well, what would that look like as an indicator in the complaints reports, you wouldn't necessarily see it come through, just because the numbers are very different. But nevertheless, for those individuals where we've got those challenges are very, very significant. So certainly I know in the child and family performance scrutiny, the scrutiny committee are very mindful of monitoring those impacts when they're monitoring the performance information, but it won't play through into complaints. It's unlikely to, just on the basis of numbers, though, Councillor Jones.
Okay,
Thank you,
thanks very
Dave.
much.
Are there any other? Sarah and Dave and Louise? No, lovely. So we'll go on to item 7. And again, Louise, you wanted to?
Yeah, I'm happy to take everyone through this report. Sorry, let me just. I can't. I'm trying to go on 2 screens, so I've got the agenda in front of me. Yes, thank you very much. So yeah, it's a really nice opportunity to bring this report, really, as it kind of summarises all the really good work that's being done across the service in terms of delivering on our policy commitments that were obviously in our Labour manifesto and then turned into a policy document that was passed by council. So I'll sort of just take through a few of those. I don't want to. It's a long report. Don't want to kind of go into it in too much detail. Hopefully you've all read through it before the meeting. So in terms of the commitment in terms of investing £750 million in better care across Swansea, this is very much, about trying to deliver the adult services vision, which is working alongside you to live well and safely in our community. There's a sort of equal focus here on investing in our statutory provision and the things that we do around that, but also our early help and preventative work, and that sort of how people step up and step down between the two, if you like. It's mainly outlined on page 45, and it's also about the work that we're doing in partnership and with our commission services, and our regional work as well is key to this, as we've had some reports on that in the last meeting. Kind of skipping forward then to our policy commitments around fairer pay for care workers. Obviously, this is incredibly important that we recognise the extraordinary job that our staff do, and in well, all care workers do that we work with. So we need to ensure that this is reflected in what we pay our own staff, and that this is also passed on to staff in our commissioned services. In terms of the next one is about seeking to provide better day opportunities and respite services across the city. We know that day services and respite is so important for service users and for their families, and people's needs are changing, and we're looking to change our models of service to reflect this. There's also supported by a capital programme to ensure that all our facilities are the best that they can be. The next point then is about developing and operating our network of local area coordinators. We took a very detailed report on that to this committee last meeting, and that's obviously coming under the portfolio of my colleague Councillor Gwilliam. So I won't spend too much time on that, but I think everyone was agreed at that meeting about the really huge positive impact that the LACs are making to our communities. Moving on then to what we're calling the sort of 100-day commitments, the things that we sort of did as soon as we after the election, therefore. Undertaking a review of post-pandemic care provisions. This kind of follows on quite nicely from what we were talking about in the last item. We've looked really carefully at what happened during the pandemic and making sure that we kind of kept the good stuff, because obviously a lot of different ways of working through that, as well as seeing how it really impacted upon our services. So and also recognising the pressures that's made on our communities, on our residents. Our staff are obviously a huge part of this, and our relationships with our domiciliary care providers. And Dave has stolen my thunder, because I was going to mention in this part about how the incredible hard work that's been done to bring down our waiting list, particularly around domiciliary care, back to those sort of pre-COVID levels. So a huge congratulations to the staff for the work that they've been doing on that. Sorry, go back to my other screen. Next commitment was around options appraisal and moving to increase council direct delivery of care. This is obviously a huge ambition of ours to bring more care but in-house and deliver it ourselves. Obviously, this is hugely funding dependent and difficult to do, but our delivery is therefore very much focused on the specialist services and things that we can offer. Our reablement offer, for example, and that step up, step down services that I've talked about, and helping people to reduce their time spent in hospital or in residential care. Health. Swansea Council engage with health to ensure care plans align with health recovery. We're working more closely than ever with the health board colleagues. The transformational project through the RPB, again, we took a report on this last meeting, are moving at pace. Of course, we've got our integrated head of service with the health board, Helen, who has given apologies today. So that's a very, very quick whiz through of obviously a huge amount of work, but I just wanted to highlight the kind of key things, and I think hopefully all agreed that we're making some really good progress on these. We're looking at them specifically as we go along in scrutiny. So I'm happy to take any questions. I think Dave and Amy are on hand to help me answer them if there's anything technical.
Thank you, Louise. Are there any questions for Louise? Alan?
Yeah. Thank you, Louise. Yeah, not so much a question really. I note the fact that there is a commitment there for better care within the city, and you have a vision there for adult services. I don't know whether I'm in the right section here, but I notice there's a distinct absence for homelessness and those who may be suffering from all kinds of abuse, whether it's drug abuse or alcohol abuse. I mean, is there anything that we do within the city to help the homelessness problem? Particularly things like I suppose recovery programs, rehabilitation, and post-rehabilitation is important as well, because once they come away from that, they need further support in terms of whether it's training or help to be put in work. I read the document there. The word homelessness is in there. I've been looking for it, but I haven't been able to find it at this moment in time.
Absolutely, there's an overlap. I mean, housing and homelessness comes under a portfolio of Councillor Andrea Lewis. So obviously there is a an overlap with the social services directorate and adult services. So and we work closely with colleagues in housing, as you say, particularly around things like mental health and substance abuse and things like that. So I think there's been reports on housing and homelessness gone to other committees. I think service improvement panel probably took the report on that, but I can make sure that that's sent on. The similar report like this has been done on those things, so I can make sure that that's sent across. Amy, I don't know if you wanted to pick up on any of that as well, because obviously some of it does come under you as well.
Just as you say, this overlaps a number of different portfolios, but within adult services, the next report we've got coming up actually talks about our temporary accommodation pathway for homelessness support. So it is a part of our commissioned activity and also the work of our teams as well. So there's a bit more information in the next report as well.
Thank you.
You're on mute, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, no, you were on mute.
Oh.
Shall I ask? Can I go?
Yes, please. Sorry.
Yeah, on the first page, it actually says adult services better care policy. Swansea Council will commit to investing 750 million for better care. What is that 750 million? Is it additional money to the budget or part of it? Or what sort of period are we actually talking about?
I think it's the 5-year period, I believe, of the council term. So it's it's just looking at the money that we invest on an ongoing basis in care, and sort of obviously covering everything we do. Is that fair? Is that a fair answer, Amy, Dave?
Well, yeah. So is it additional money, or is it just the budget that's been? I can see a mention above, really, commitments adopted the council for the period 22 to 27. I can see the 5 years there, but really, is that the 5 years we're actually talking about, the 750 million, or?
Yes,
it is, right. And is that, the money that we actually spend on social services, or have done so far, and probably will do, anticipated up until 2027? It's not 750 million additional money.
Unfortunately, no, we haven't suddenly had a windfall of an extra.
I know it's a lot, and so. But
yeah,
actually reading, it looks as if it's additional money to me when I read it first of all, but it's not additional.
Sadly not, no. But I think it's just trying to make the point that it is such a huge part of the council budget, and that is devoted to social services, and we know we've ring-fenced that and protected that as our as one with education and social care as our priorities in the budget.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Chris Hodge.
Thank you, Chair. Louise, the said about respite care and about domicile and residential care. Have we any plans to look again at the qualifying period and a qualifying entry into respite and into residential care? I didn't notice anything in the report to say that residential care or because we have altered the entry position for respite care. We've done it in the last couple of years. I'm wondering, are we going to change it again, or is it going to remain as it is? Thank you.
Amy, I think perhaps you better answer that one. I'm not sure of the detail around that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. In terms of, I'll start with residential. So, as you say, a few years ago, the residential in-house provision, particularly with the residential, prioritised complex care, and with the external market providing other aspects of the care. So it was looked at across the whole provision in Swansea that we deliver and our partners deliver. The pandemic has obviously taught us a lot, and we know that we have to revisit some of this, but we don't anticipate a significant change again. So we do see the focus in our residential services around planned respite, so ensuring that we maximise the amount that we use for planned respite for individuals, the amount that we provide for long-term complex care, so still sticking with what was agreed a number of years ago, the amount of step-up, step-down beds we provide, so that short-term assessment kind of period for people to ensure that they stay home for as long as possible, so they remain independent. So if they need a short period of time in residential, or people stepping down from hospital, so coming into our services as reablement, but then with the aim to return home. And a fourth one that I can't quite remember then in my mind now, respite, long-term complex.
It's the entrance into respite, it is, and the entrance into daycare, because, you know, a couple of years ago we changed the entry qualifications for daycare and also the facilities, but also are we staying the same, or are we looking at again about changing the qualifying for residential for daycare and respite care?
No, but they'll be within the next report. Sorry, this all sounds good. It's part of our transformation programme as well. It's looking at our use of our day services and day opportunities, and recommissioning and looking at the approach we're taking with our day opportunities. So in terms of that criteria that you mentioned, that would potentially be looked at, but not anticipating changing anything. In terms of planned respite as well, there's no changes planned. We want to maximise the amount of availability of planned respite, residential respite and day respite, to support our carers, unpaid carers as well. That's a really key focus of our adult services offer as well. So we want to increase that as much as we can. That might be what we offer internally, but also what we commission the external sector as well to provide for us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
Are there any more questions for either Louise or Amy? No, we'll go on to item number 8 now then. Gosh, we're going like...
I was expecting these to all be very long reports, but...
Brilliant, brilliant. Louise, do you want to lead on this again?
And as I say, I think if I don't want it to become the me show, I think it might be better if perhaps Amy picks up this. But again, this is a long-term. This is a report covering the last 5 years of the commissioning reviews that have taken place over, you know, a wide range of services, and some of them are sort of still ongoing or ready for another refresh now. So again, it's hopefully everyone's had a chance to have a look through that. But yeah, Amy, would you perhaps be better if you took through this one, especially as a lot of it was sort of pre-me being in post.
Amy, do you want to share the screen for that report as well now?
Yeah, if you just bear with me, I had it open ready to do that, and now I've yes, this is another quite long report, so I don't want to go into too much detail, because I could be tempted to, if that's okay. So I'll try and just give you a summary information. So can you see the screen?
I can everybody else?
Yes.
Okay, excellent, thank you. So yeah, this is to give you an overview of our commissioning reviews that have taken place. It's a bit of a long view, so over the last 5 years, because obviously the last 3 years have been impacted by the pandemic. So some of these were completed sort of 3 years ago, others have been delayed slightly, or things have changed in terms of the mix, in terms of those what we used to call commissioning reviews. It's identified what our current commissioning priorities are, and then how we align these to our transformation and improvement programmes. And for Scrutiny's perspective as well, we wanted to be clear about how you'll hear about these going forward as well. So whether they come under our transformation programme updates, or they come under our performance programme updates as well. So the report gives that background information. So just going to try and give you a couple of key highlights from a couple of them. So what was the commissioning reviews? What were the commissioning reviews? Sorry, we looked at the catering service. This was actually completed back in 2019. It's been embedded as business as usual. So 2019, yeah. So looked at the way we looked at the meal structures, the way items were costed as well, and that was very much co-produced with staff and service users as well. So there's good outcomes to that commissioning review, and it's now business as usual. The dom care has been mentioned in both reports actually that we've looked at so far. So there was a large commissioning review that took place and was implemented in 2019. We are getting to the position now where we need to refresh that domiciliary care framework. We're looking at new commissioning models as well to increase capacity and develop more resilient approaches going forward. We're also making sure we work as a region, and we're also looking at how we can look at our procurement framework for younger adults dom care as well as older adults as well, and dom care respite as well. So that's respite in people's homes as opposed to residential respite or day services respite. We did the residential service review model, which has just been referenced, in which refocused our internal day services. At the time, if councillors who were involved at the time will remember, Parkway was vacated at the time. But of course, during we can't not reference really the last few years, the fact that it was used as a temporary place during the pandemic. It was used as additional capacity, but it was vacated for residential use in 2021, continued to be used for training, but it's subsequently been sold, which was the plan a few years ago until we used it for additional capacity. The internal beds, as I've referenced, are used for either planned respite, long-term placements, or also this step up, step down. So ensuring that we can support hospital avoidance and also hospital discharge as well. We've increased the amount of reablement support we have. So within Bonamine House, our specialist reablement site, and this has increased to 24 beds that we provide there now. So that's been a refocus in the last few years and learning from the pandemic. We're going to ensure that we continue implementing our internal residential model of care and ensuring we progress, and that will come through our performance reporting as well. Our younger adults and day services, obviously things have changed over the last couple of years, so that bit of work that started with our commissioning review is now being developed and really picked up at pace now. So options for moving forward are going to be remodelled and reprocured during this financial year as well, so during 23-24. So that's both in terms of how we remodel anything internally, but also what we commission from external providers as well. I referenced previously about homelessness. So there's been a review looking at housing homelessness support for single people over 18 as a particular focus. So that's ensured that we've had what we've implemented so far is a temporary accommodation pathway for homeless people. There's a single point of access for temporary supported accommodation. There's also there were numerous referral forms, and it's been replaced by a single referral form. So all of this has been co-produced with our providers, with people who've experienced homelessness, and also our housing colleagues internally as well, and our commissioning colleagues. There's going to be new service specifications for a new procurement framework this year as well. So there's been a number of supplier engagement events as well, and it's due to go to South Wales within the next few months in terms of our homelessness provision, particularly for the single homeless people over 18 as a part. And the homelessness housing support strategy got signed off in last financial year as well, so that's been a part of this work as well, just to reference the previous question about the amount of activity in this area. Younger adult supported living, that was the review is ongoing at the moment, and we're due to refresh the framework this financial year, so ensuring that we go out. We're also looking at a similar framework for mental health supported living, so this is meeting our priorities around people being in independent accommodation and supporting people in that way. And we're also working with our regional colleagues just to ensure compatibility and working together within the sector and with the providers as well. Sensory impairment, Scrutiny had a report on this previously around the options, I believe, quite recently, or certainly in the last year, but we're looking at remodelling existing services around sensory impairment support as well, so providing information advice services and ensuring the appropriate pathways and support for people. And we're reprocuring these this year. So as you can see, there's an awful lot of activity around our commissioning and our procurement activity. Same with older adult day opportunities. This is something that's been picked up again quite recently. So previously under a commissioning review, it looked at our day centre offer, particularly around older adults. But what we have found is that during the pandemic and even in recent months as well, demand has reduced in terms of older persons' day service use, just slightly. You know, it's picked up again, but not to the extent of the pre-pandemic. And I think we want to look at a scope to do things differently and look at a future model. So this is ongoing work at the moment, so I can't tell you the outcome of what's planned there. Just, if you're all right, have patience. Sorry to keep going. There's quite a lot on this report. So we've got extra care services for older people. So this is done a full review on this, looking at the benefits both for individuals and the wider system. And so the extra care model is showing it's reducing admissions to residential care and admissions to hospital. It's more efficient than traditional dom care as well. So it's creating a resource for the wider community quite often as well. So we're looking to re-procure these services during this financial year, and service specs are being finalised at the moment. And consultation engagement methods are underway to ensure that it meets the needs of what citizens are telling us. Same as with carer services, this is, as mentioned, this is a really key priority for us, and we've got a number of commissioned carer services that we've looked and reviewed where they are, particularly align them to our carer strategy that we've signed off previously. And we've brought also, we did the joint scrutiny recently where we talked about the support for carers as well, the joint adult services and children's services. And the procurement side of it and our commissioned activity, we're looking to re-procure these during 2023. So this will be in the coming months as well. Oh, my screen's gone a bit blurry there. I'm not sure if you're seeing that as blurry or not.
It's blurry.
Aha. Just refresh that, see if that makes a difference. Yeah, okay, so that was the carer service. And then the just to let you know how this is going to be reported through. So the day services, the internal residential care, the use of the step up, step down beds and the assistive technology commissioning is going to be brought through our transformation updates to Scrutiny. So you'll hear these over the coming year when you get the updates. And then through our performance reports, you'll get the activity around the younger adults, the temporary supported accommodation, sensory impairment, and carer services re-procurement as well. Just wanted to reference in terms of financial implications. This isn't a report sort of telling you the update of each individual scheme, but just to reference that historically commissioning reviews have been used to realise savings. And any service review and retendering does bring risks of increasing costs. And I think it's something just to reference, particularly in the current economic environment, and just to ensure, and with the high inflation, but also to ensure the stability of the sector. And we obviously need to manage that through our financial planning. And then just in terms of the integrated impact assessments, so this is just a summary report of the activity that has been done, that's ongoing and that's planned. And within each individual programme, there will be specific integrated impact assessments as well. So there is a screening attached to this, but there is one for, you know, each individual scheme, whether that's the carers or whether that's the recommissioning the dom care. So I just wanted to reference that.
Thank you, Amy. Are there any questions for Amy? Councillor Chris Holly.
Thanks, Amy. I was on one of the first commissioning reviews and actually sat through most of them. And yeah, they were there, let's be blunt about it, to save money, not to devalue care, but to actually try and save money, get more for your money, if for the want of a better term. Then some of them worked, some of them desperately didn't work, and the day services one certainly didn't work, and we had to look at that again. I think there is, I believe, an opportunity now, if you are reviewing these, to look at them again. And some of them needs, you know, especially the respite and the daycare services, because the vulnerable adults that they service, I know the LACs are brought in to actually assist, that we could look at seeing if there's any way that the day services could be changed with the local area coordinators. So I think that there are issues around it, and I think if we are refreshing these commissioning reviews, the commissioning review on social services at the time was too big, far too big. And when Bob Clay was chair, Councillor Bob Clay was chair of it, we broke it down into a number of different issues. And I think it is, if we are looking again at these commissioning reviews, I think we need to take them an individual basis, as the smaller units, the daycare first one, or respite care, or the use for adult services, or sorry, with the older children services, plus 18. So I think there is an opportunity to look at them again, but I think you are right. This time around, there is a distinct possibility that some of those services will cost considerably more, considering the position that we're in, and the fact that inflation and other costs have gone up considerably. So I think there is a risk, you're right, to have a look again at these commission reviews, but I think if we owe it to the public to look at them, but being very mindful of what we've learned in the past. And I think what we've learned in the past is not everything works the way we think it does, and people are very much different, and we've got to take that into consideration as well. But I look forward to the commission reviews. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Louise, you.
Thanks. Yeah, if I
Amy
could
and
just.
Louise have both got your hands up.
Sorry, if I could just respond first of all to some of the points that Chris was making. I think really welcome his comments. And obviously, it's a cycle. The commissioning reviews a cycle, and I obviously I don't know how they went on before, but I know that the commissioning team and everyone involved in them now really value co-production and listening to what our service users want, and you're right, things have changed, haven't they? And in terms of day services in particular, they're hugely valuable, but not everybody wants that traditional day service model anymore. And so it's looking at how we can deliver and use our LACs and make use of existing things in the community, and recognize that it's not how it used to be, where you got on a bus, you went, you sat, you came home. There's lots of different opportunities for people and lots of things that we can be doing differently, using direct payments or whatever. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth looking at it and making sure that our residents' voices are heard throughout that process. Hope that's all right for me to come in and say that, Amy.
Thank you,
I was going to say almost the same. I was going to say I suppose we're not looking at it in the same way as the old language of commissioning reviews either. That it's our commissioning cycle, so it's our improvement and our transformation programme and our commissioning cycle. So some of it might be where we do recommission and actually procure a service. Some of it is about redesigning, but what we put central to it is the co-production element with the people who use our services currently, but then those who don't as well, and the reasons they don't use the service, and making sure we're meeting, or we can we and our commission providers as well can meet the needs and the demands that are there as well. So it's just, yeah, absolutely, we'll give updates to our transformation and our performance information, as opposed to that perhaps that previous model of sort of commissioning reviews that were, yeah, I don't know what they were because I wasn't involved either at the time, but I seen the reports.
Thank you, Amy.
David's laughing a bit for that because he knows we sat through hours and hours of various paperwork and looked at different models. The fact is that a lot of them were, dare I say, over bureaucratic, and we lost out really on what the idea of the commissioning review was, because we were looking at how you do X, Y, and Z. But I think there is a chance now, Dave, that if we look at them, that now with the knowledge we have, especially what we've learned about during the pandemic, about what people want themselves more than anything else, it's very possibly a completely different type of commissioning now that is going to be needed. So I think it is an ideal opportunity there.
Dave, you want to speak?
Yeah, I'll come in, and only because Councillor Holly spotted me smiling, so I felt like I had to respond. Look, we have learnt a lot through. I mean, don't to diss all the hard work that did take place, through that process. But I suppose one of the things that we learned was we designed a corporate approach to take, to managing what were described as commissioning reviews across all of the council's business. And I think one of the things that we learned is, much as people have described, is, the reality is the council runs, hundreds of very different services, and that kind of the attempted one size fits all approach to how we should carry out that activity. I think we learned that it didn't work particularly well in some areas. Doesn't mean that we didn't get any value from it. We did, but we learned stuff from that. Plus, we have obviously, as everyone's acknowledged, learned a lot over our response to a global health pandemic that turned everything up in the air and changed things for us, definitely changed things for our population. I think what Amy and Councillor Gillard are describing in terms of the learning that we've taken from that and the approach to, which fits very much with what Councillor Holly described as, that you've got to create bespoke approaches to how you revisit some of our current approaches, some of, and things are changing iteratively all of the time as well. But the key bit, and I'd reinforce that as well, that we're leading the way in our approach to co-production in our directorate, leading the way in the council, but we're getting feedback that's telling us that we're leading the way in some of this work across Wales. And that's a great strength. It throws up some challenges as well, but nevertheless, it's a great strength to build on. And as Amy stressed, you as a scrutiny, performance committee should continue to factor in, regular updates on the transformation and improvement work. It's feeding into other areas of the council as well, but you should maintain a particular focus in your schedule of business going forward. And then what you'll have then is the opportunity to dive into the detail of some of the bespoke pieces of work that are being undertaken, and help influence and shape that and be part of that co-production approach. Actually, that's what the opportunity is, and I'm sure the committee will do that work well, and we'll appreciate that constructive input through the process as well.
Thank you, Dave. Alan, you've got a question?
Yeah, did my little hand work?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Chair. And it's just an observation for Amy, really. I was looking at that earlier discussion on your report there, 2.1.2, where it talked about the outcomes included. And it actually discussed a lot of reductions there, and I do note that it was for December 2019. Was that done, well, thinking in mind of the pandemic that was taking place at that time? And if that is the case, has this been revised since? Because I noticed out of those 14 points on there, 7 of them are all to do with reductions. I wonder, have they been upgraded in any way?
Yeah, no, it's a good challenge, because actually that was December 19 it was implemented. It was kind of closed as a commissioning review, but it just meant it got embedded in business as usual. But of course, everything tipped upside down in March 20, didn't it? And it was a very different provision. But a lot of it was around the food that was provided within residential services, which carried on, and the principles that were applied at the time have been incorporated as business as usual across the team. So in terms of the menu structure, the recipe cards, the portion control, the nutritional analysis, that all got applied. The staffing structure as well is become our business as usual. So those reductions in hours and the sort of savings that came about at the time, yeah, the efficiencies that were found, that was all implemented. Yeah,
I asked that because my wife has been in nursing for over 40 years, and a lot of it recently has been in the private sector. And when it said there, portion control, there's a bit of a concern, because the portion control from what my wife has experienced are minuscule, so it's I was wondering whether the cost cutting exercise was actually sort of depriving the elderly people of a decent meal.
If I can just, it's a good question, but I can't tell you every fact and figure, but I do know in terms of revisiting the report Sarah said earlier, we get compliments a lot about the food. So you know, with the feedback
I
we
was going
get
to
from
say,
people.
I visited the Hollies this
That's good to
afternoon,
hear.
and they just had their lunch, and they had sausage and onions or corned beef pie, and both looked very nice.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Thank you all. Are there any more questions for Amy?
Yeah, just before you finish, can I
Yes.
say to Jeff, Alan, sorry, the portion control was more about the nutritional value of what people were having. And dare I say it, some occasions that the nutritional value of what was on the plate was no much better than what the plate itself. So there were some changes, dramatic changes. And also there was a greater emphasis on local produced goods. Because when we done it, going back to 2007, 2009, we were doing procurement, but we wanted procurement to become more local, and the social services, and especially that around the purchase of goods for, you know, the residential care. What we ensured that they were far more locally sourced food stocks.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Jeff Jones.
Yeah, it's going back to page 58. It actually mentions about the increased capacity in Bonamine, you know, to support the discharge through step up, step down from hospital, which I think is hopefully going to increase anyway. You know, we've actually closed Parkway. You know, what is the capacity we've actually got internal? And, you know, when we reach that capacity, I'm not sure if 24 in Bonamine is our capacity. Do we actually move on to the private sector then? Is there, you know, or do we use them now, or is an intention to actually use them?
Yeah, we have more beds across our service. I can't tell you the exact figure. I wish I could tell you off the top of my head, actually, but I don't. But we can certainly report to Scrutiny and give you the figures of the total beds. It's around 150 across all our services around, but I'll get you the exact figure. And they're a mixture of the planned respite beds, the long-term complex, the reablement, and step up, step down, sort of temporary placements. So in terms of the private sector, so it's a good question. What we're doing at the moment, because of the winter pressures, which thankfully we're very much out of now, we're not very much out of, there's still pressures in the system, but certainly over the winter period, the private sector were involved in this more. So between ourselves, the health board, commissioned, private sector commissioned, and internal beds, we looked more at the use of temporary beds across all of residential services to support with the pressures in hospital. We're looking and revisiting that now to see whether that is a long-term plan or not. But what we do know is the use of our internal beds and how we use those. And we do want to maximise the use of those where we can for that sort of temporary step up from the community as a short-term sort of to work out what's the best long-term plan for that individual and hopefully enable them to go back home as soon as possible, or also that step down from hospital in terms of reablement. So we're maxing out the amount of beds we've got for that, but making sure we've got that balance, because as was referenced earlier, things like respite is really key as well. You know, we want to ensure that we have enough capacity to provide residential respite as well with our in-house beds. So yeah, it's at the moment, yes, we use all sectors, but we are looking at that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Right, thank you for that. We'll go on to the next item. And it's item 9, and I don't know whether Amy, Louise and David would like to leave, because this is for us as a committee to discuss. So thank you very much for your support this afternoon and for your information. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Right.
Okay, panel review now then for year 22-23. It's a normal 4 questions. What went well? What didn't go? What can we do better? Shall we go, what went well? What do you feel went well during this last year?
Oh, that's a.
I think
Is there only,
it's
there's only
I think
four
it's
of us
quite
here.
difficult. I think it's quite difficult to say, Sue, what went well, because you know when you do these meetings, you have a feeling parts are doing very well, others aren't doing so well. I think one of the things that went well was the fact that the engagement with the officers was better than it's been in the past. So I think I would say that engagement with social services officers was good. What we could do better, I suspect what we could do better is have a closer look at some of the items that came up. You talked about those commissioning reviews. I'll be perfectly honest with you, Sue. Some of the commissioning reviews was plain and simple to save money. Others were different. I have to say, when Bob Clay chaired it, he was very fair and very honest about he didn't want to save money, he wanted to improve the service. In some cases he didn't, but you know, and I know that we would want to improve services as opposed to cutting the care type of thing. So I think what went well was the engagement of officers. What didn't go so well is the depth of investigation that was carried out in many cases. And I think what we could do better is look at smaller items within the whole of the whole of thing. If we say if the commissioning reviews come again, I think one of the things we need to look at is daycare. Daycare on its own, and I think those are the type of things I would say.
I was interested to when Dave said that that we as councillors would be included in that as a co-production of some of the services, because we get to know what the people on the ground actually feel about these services. So I think that is quite a positive thing that we need to be more astute in. Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah. You happy with that? Yeah. So again, I felt the engagement with officers has been really very good. We've had Louise nearly at every meeting, and Dave has attended every meeting. Yeah, so I feel that has gone well. You all feel for that in that way?
Yeah, I think they've been quite honest as well, really. You know, they haven't dodged questions. I must admit, you know, well, every section is actually trying to save money at the end of the day, and I must admit, my concerns around social services, you know, I've been here, Chris has been here a lot longer, you know, 14 years. It's the provision by the authority for people. The onus is moving more and more onto people providing more themselves. You know, I think we need to delve a little bit deeper into that. I'm concerned, you know, this thing about reablement, you know, going into hospital and getting them back home and so on. It's everybody wants to be back in their home, but they need the support there, you know. And I think there's more and more onus on people looking after them, or the family looking after themselves a bit more too. I think, Chris, there was a provision before which was low, medium and high. Well, they've gone out of the window, you know what I mean? You know, so it's but you know what I mean. You mentioned Bob Clay, and fair play to Bob Clay. He was totally against outsourcing, wasn't he? You know, and closing our residential homes, and of course, you know, Parkway's gone now. You know, and that's what I'm saying. It's concerning a little bit.
The thing is that let's be blunt about it. People recover better when they're more comfortable, and hospitals are full of sick and ill people with loads of germs lying around. So if you can get out of hospital as soon as possible, that's the best thing for people's health. So that is a fact, you know, we all know that. The step up and step down beds, but you know, it's not our decision about the clinical requirements of people. What we are here to do is to see that the operation of the council is fair and equal, and has actually got the benefit the benefit of the people that it's looking after before the benefit of the council, and that's what we need to do. We can't say if someone's got a broken leg or they've got to be in so and so such, that's a clinician decision. So our role is more to look at what the council's providing, the right sort of source equipment, the right sort of support, that type of thing. And that's where, when we start looking at these commissioning reviews, that's the type of thing you've got to start looking at. And that's one of the things that when the commissioning review was done on daycare, and this is why I say so that that's one thing that we need to look at, because daycare was so critically important for many people in 2018.
Yeah.
But we're now in
That's it.
2023 and life has changed, and we've got to see what daycare means now to people, And I think that's what you're saying. And you are right, yeah, people do want to save money in their budgets and what have you. But, at the same time, we've got to make sure that what the public expect is what they can get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree. This is what I was saying, that, we need to ensure that, when they are actually perhaps put back into the community, the support is there. You know what I mean?
Yes, yes. Respite provided for carers, families that are, looking after their relatives. Yeah. Okie dokie. Do you think we've, as a panel, focused on the right things in the past year?
I pretty much think so,
Yes.
Sarah, because, but we have a work plan that's set up by the work planning conference, and we stick to that. There are things that, like this, what they're saying about these commissioner reviews, that will have to be looked at, and that may be separate to anything else. So you just have to wait and see with that one.
Yeah. I know Tony wanted to bring the relationship between health and social services and how that was working, whether there were any strains, but unfortunately he wasn't in this meeting. But maybe we can keep that in mind. Well,
definitely, it's important.
looking at our work plan as well.
Yeah.
What do you think that we've learned to help us for the future then and improve future scrutiny?
I think as a group, we've learned that officers change a lot, and they have, and part of the problem with the various changes is that we need to understand that there has to be a continuity, and I think what many people learn as they go along is the continuity of how social services work, regardless of who the officers are. Dave House has been here a long time, so Dave is okay, but others come and go. And I think what we've learned as a group is that we listen to things and we debate things, and we understand what social services is about, as opposed to relying on officers telling us what it's about.
On a practical point of view, I think, bearing in mind I've been doing this for 12 months now, that the presentation and the quality of the presentation of the officers has greatly improved over a 12-month period, because when we started off on this, some of them were poor at best, and that's not at the fault of the presenter, but of the technology at the time. But they've greatly improved, and it's made it easier then for us then, to get a fuller understanding of the principles that we've been talking about, And another thing, a good thing that we've learned from it as well is that I think that the benefit that that's been gained by the introduction of local area coordinators, that seems to be working pretty well, and it is good to hear that, and good.
Yes, I agree with you, Alan. I think that's been a tremendous system. I'm a big supporter of it, I must be honest. Yeah. Have anybody got any other comments? Erica, have you got any comments?
Thank you, Chair. you know, when you say about learning, I think my learning has been how we manage through these very, very difficult times. We can't provide what we would like. There's no two ways. But to see the officers seriously looking at their shoes and not about cutting costs, although that does come into it, but what is best for the individual. I think that's all we can do. That is the best we can do at the moment. So I'm always sad when I come to these meetings, because you know what's out there, you know some things are not being touched or recognised, and yet we are still trying within our limits to do the best we can. And I think that's really important. You know, our people need to see that we care and we will try and we are listening. And I think that's changed a bit as well. As Chris was saying, years ago, it was like, oh God, I don't know, bit of a nightmare. But I do feel they're looking and they're listening, and they really are, you know, going outside the box to see what we can do next to support people. I think that's my learning, is you just stick with it and we do our best, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been having problems too. I was got to say, I'm really sorry. I'm in the Gloucester room. I've only got my mobile phone and it's been breaking, so I haven't caught everything that's been said. But I've read the reports, and that's really what I glean from it. Okay, thanks.
You've been breaking up a little bit as well, and I found that quite difficult. It's been a learning curve for me to be on the computer, I gotta say. So, Liz, have we covered everything that you wanted to put in the report?
Yes, I think that's great. I've got a few comments of what people think of the last year, so I'll yeah, those in a minute.
I think as well, to improve scrutiny, maybe we need some more members of the council to come on board. I don't know if you all feel the same.
It would be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because we're starting a new municipal year now, I think it would be a good idea if we sort of advertise, you know, see if there's any more interest from some of the new councillors. Now they've had a year, see if anyone else, you know, has an interest in this area. Yeah, we'll do that.
Oh, it's all good.
Are you happy with all the comments? Does anybody got any other comments? Alan, do you want something?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
You're
Yeah,
fine.
I'm happy with it all. Yes.
You seem to be coming and going. That's why I ask. Okay. Thank you all for attending again. And Liz, that didn't do too bad.
Not very good.
Supposed to be
Let me
there,
just
but-
turn off the recording.
Ta-ra all.